Okay, so this is day 3, cognizing, to put some words to what we just did. And yeah. Grounding, right? We want to get into our bodies more than ever before. Like, part of the way that this world has been set up was to have us disconnect from our bodies, because our bodies have this natural intelligence, right? And that intelligence actually, when we tap into it, will undo a lot of the prevailing systems. Like, I'm just going right into this. I'm just like not even gonna, whatever. Like, we're in this. Like, let's take, for example, very closely related to our bodies is the healthcare system, right? If people were sovereign in their own bodies and capable of understanding and making a lot of their own health decisions and then being supported for that, the healthcare system would look really different. It wouldn't be like a bunch of companies profiting off of, like prescribing things for people. Right? I don't really need to talk about this, right? Like, we all know that the system is corrupt. And if we don't know that already, then it's time we acknowledge that, but it's happening. Like, it's in the psyche of our collective. A lot of people are like, turning back onto herbalism, right? And like natural medicines and homeopathy, right? And like forest bathing and like nature therapies. So actually, this is a good story segue. I'm about to tell you something that, I haven't told anybody yet. It's like actually partially the catalyst for this journey. So quick story, and then I'll get back to like what we just did and how that ties into everything. So I'm here. This is here. And where is here exactly? Well, I'm in North Carolina, close to Asheville. And I'm at this place called Sue's of the Carolinas. And it is a wilderness therapy. I want to call it an organization, but it's it is incredibly organized, but it's like so much more than that. Like, I actually do not know how this place exists, and furthermore, this place found me, and that's how I ended up here. So here's my story real quick, because this is kind of like my base camp for the rest of the virtual pilgrimage. And from here I'll be going to different places in the South, but this is my new job. That's my news. That's my big news. I got a job, which, if you know me for any length of time, is a weird thing for me to say. Basically, like, having been working for myself for the past like over a decade or more, and by myself I obviously mean the universe. But yeah, so I don't know. I haven't been talking about it in part because it actually is unreal in so many ways. So let me ground back in my body. It's the theme of today. I want to tell you this story, but it's quite like epic. Like, it's an epic story about how I got to do that. So, like a year or two ago, I put my information on this like queer environmental job board. Because I did several years ago, I got my permaculture design certification, which I'll talk about shortly. Actually, I'll just say now that permaculture is also very much like a part of what we did today. And in the Spirit Allies video, you will see one from my friend Josh. And so I count this as like part of the trip, But before I went on the trip, so I was in New Jersey, I was in South Jersey, and then got hired to do this job for Stephanie, who's in here, who at some point, if you've ever worked with me, you've communicated with Stephanie Juen, because she's like the right wing of this lobster bird. And Josh and I did a permaculture job for Stephanie's parents for their front yard, and basically turned what was like a kind of neglected bed, into this amazing landscape that has like herbs, and it has perennial flowers that are also like good for attracting pollinators. And so it's like not only something like landscaping that's beautiful, right, but it's also helps give back to the environment, and it also provides like a lot of love and light and nourishment for the people that have it, and also will help protect the soil and restore the soil there, which, if you don't know, our soil is everything. Like, basically, I'll say this in one sentence, all of the world's problems could be solved by restoring the soil. If you want to get into this as a discussion, we can get into it, but that is the truth of the situation. It's actually a lot easier than anyone has led us to believe. We can solve world hunger by restoring the soil. And restoring the soil is deceptively easy. Like, it's not hard. So everywhere I go, it's my intention and it's my action that I restore the soil. So I was restoring the soil at my parents' house before I left, and then like in part doing it at Stephanie's parents. And so, like what we did in the grokking practice is actually everything about permaculture. That was like an embodied permaculture practice. You've heard it here first. I don't know if there ever was such a thing. But permaculture is all about how everything is connected to all things. And it's basically about creating systems that have very little energetic input, and yet help like every other part of the ecosystem that they're part of. That's like one definition. That's kind of one that I've given you right now in the context of this, because basically in order to practice permaculture, like you have to have some understanding of interdependence and interconnectedness, and like how things work together, and how every single thing in this environment has an impact on everything else. And so as humans, like we are very smart in some ways. And so we could utilize our brains in order to create systems that actually benefit the whole. This goes back to that whole healthcare thing I was talking about, right? We could do that, and we could start by where we are right now, like where we live, and looking at our houses and looking at the way we relate to the land that we're on, right? Like, so it's not like this big thing that we have to like travel to wherever and go to whatever university. Like, you can start right now somewhere in your own place, like even by like putting a tomato plant in a pot, right, and growing it. Like, that is a start. And actually that's like kind of how I started, and then it just like spiraled out like those galaxies in our womb space, right? It spiraled out into like so many different crazy directions, and this is one of them. So, because I was doing the permaculture thing, and it came to me that like Patagonia, who is this glorious trans, I don't want to say environmentalist. They're basically like human rights advocate for, LGBTQ plus people in nature. I don't know if that's how they describe it, but that's what they are and what they do. And so anyway, well, I think they are a she. Patagonia created this queer, it's an LGBTQ plus environmental job board. And so a year or two ago, I put my information on it because I am, and I, had really set the intention. That's why I got my permaculture design certificate, to really be working more so I've been doing these earth magic virtual pilgrimages, and a lot of it has been the energetic side of it. And so I really wanted to like up level, right, the human connective physical practice of it and what that means. So fast forward a couple of years later, like I felt called to do that, like intuitively, and like with my own, soul navigation system, which we'll talk about, I think, tomorrow. I felt called to put my name on there. Totally forgot about it. Years go by. And I was looking, I was like, I really need a few things here. Like I'm ready now for a place to ground, like to be where I can have like a tiny house in the forest. And I can like hermit away when I need to, and I can like do my healing work, and people will like find me on the mountain, right? And I'm like, don't have to advertise anything. They'll just like come and find me. I'll do my healing work there. I'll work with the land. Like I will live off and with the land and give back to it. I'll have a surrounding community that we support each other in new ways and create new economies and new currencies and new ways of relating to one another. Like very specific in my mind's eye. I can see this place and I yearn for it in my heart and soul. And I know it's being co-created as I speak and move because I'm here. And so what happened is, I was in several situations where it was not like in the exactly aligned place. And so I said to myself, well, all right, let's get more specific. And over the winter, we had this amazing winter solstice ceremony with Lindsay Abramitis Smith. And like around that time, like we made sigils and like set all these intentions. And as part of that, I was like, let me get more specific. And Aaron Diaz, we did this, the three of us. It was amazing. And, so I was like, all right, well, I'm in the U.S., right? If this place exists in the U.S., well, where would it be? I could only think of 3 places in the U.S. that I would actually, like, want to live. And one I have a deep connection with, and the other one is like somewhere I haven't been yet, but I like just feel really interested and drawn to it. And the third that I wrote down was Pisgah National Forest. Now, I thought that was strange enough because I was like somehow implying that I wanted to live in a national forest. And so that was weird. But the other weird part was that I've only been to Pisgah National Forest once in 2018. I did this sacred survival school, which was basically like earth-based spirituality and shamanism, like combined with wilderness skills. So it was my first time going cross country and camping solo as I traveled cross country. Those two things combined. I've gone cross country before, but I've never camped solo across the way. So it was prepping me for that. And what's crazy about this, what is totally crazy about this, is that journey was inspired by the little people. So the little people, if you don't know, are also known by like as the Fae, and particularly like in places, I said that like real sassy, they're the Fae. But particularly like in Ireland, as I have learned from indigenous Irish folk. Fae is kind of all-encompassing for like the fairy folk and little people and then, like the elemental nature spirits, right? So Fae is kind of a really great word to use because I have a relationship with all of them. But ever since I was little, I have had this very prominent relationship with the little people who are known by many names in many different traditions. In Western traditions, they're often known as gnomes. So that might be it. And in the Philippines, they're known as duende. And actually, I'm going to post that too. I'm going to ask first. So hopefully she says yes. But when we were doing the permaculture project at Stephanie's parents' house, her parents are from the Philippines. And I mean, that whole thing was orchestrated, like that whole me doing that was orchestrated by the duende. And then her mom tells this amazing story about a priest in the Philippines and the duende tradition there. And so I really would like to include that. So I'm going to ask. Hopefully you'll see that. And then I'm kind of going off the rails on a crazy train, but that's what happens when you have a relationship with the little people, is that they send you like on these like crazy ass missions and shenanigans, and like they're tricksy and they're funny, and they like, and what I realized is that ever since I've been little, they have been helping to inform and shape and direct and guide me on my path. I don't know how far to get into this. I feel like we'll get into this more later, like back to my roots, the very roots of like of this relationship and how it's evolved. But I was cracking up during the grokking video because people often ask me how they show up to me, like visually. And ever since I was little, they've always showed up as like these sources of like very colorful light. And so that's why, like, if you've ever seen a lot of my photography, I do a lot of like light photography, and there's often like orbs and things, you know, like in prisms, like in my photography, because actually, like for me, a lot of times they are actually these spirits embodied. Like that is what they look like to me and always have. And sometimes they become more embodied, but often that's all I need, really, to know that they're there. And certain other people need to see them in other ways, and so they do. Like there's more. And feel free actually to come into the Facebook group and ask me questions if you want me to address anything in particular about the Fae or the little people, because there's too much to say. I'm going to wrap this up soon. This is just like a taste of what I will express. But I also really love to respond to what people's actual questions are. And they will be coming through again, because they were the ones that when I did the Sacred Survival School and I went cross country, at that time they, like, so I also hear them very clearly. And they were saying, you have to do an Earth Magic virtual pilgrimage. And I was like, okay, like, what is that? You know, like, I had done a virtual pilgrimage before, but like, I don't even know what Earth Magic is. Like, what is that? And they were just like, you'll figure it out. And I was like, oh, okay, great. Just go do it. And they sent me to Pisgah, and there was various like ceremonies and things that happened with them while I was there, which again, I will not get into. But I don't know if you can see where I'm going with this, because this is very long and windy, just like there are shenanigans. That was 2018. This is 2022. I write down in my notebook that I want to live in Pisgah National Forest. I don't even know, like my rational mind did not know that that was a thing. It came right from my soul through my hand onto the paper. And when I looked at it, my logical mind was like, what? And then, I kid you not, I think it was like a couple days later, it was at least like the same week, I get an email in my email box that like is from this place that does wilderness therapy in Pisgah National Forest, and they want me to come work for them. And they found me. So now this is also right after I have been making a series of several posts. So if you haven't seen them, they're on Instagram, they're on Facebook, where I kind of like came out as queer and trans, etc., which like I always have been, but I never really like felt like I had to label myself as such. But you know, as I like just came out this way, I had been talking more openly about it, and then of course like practicing embodying it in my, you know, body and in my daily life. And so they emailed specifically because they found me on this queer job board. And so it was like, not only, you know, and I had been setting a lot of intentions for my work as well, which is that, you know, like, I just, you know, like, I don't want to buy in to the old systems and the old way of doing things. And I find that a lot of the models in entrepreneurship are like the old paradigm disguised as something new, basically. This is also something I can talk about as we continue this journey. So if you have questions about that, ask them. But so for me, in order to discover, like, in order to like unprogram and clear my energy, because I was participating in some of those systems and ways of thinking without consciously knowing it, because like we've all been programmed to, like growing up in a capitalist globalist world, which all of us have, didn't know I was unconsciously programmed to. So for me to be able to unprogram myself and kind of decolonize my entire being so that I can like break that cycle, the intention that I set for myself was basically like, you know what, like I'm not participating anymore. Like I'm not gonna market anything. Like I'm not gonna do any of the stuff. Like I didn't want to do it and I'm not gonna do it. And I just want to be me, and I want, like, you know, to be supported by being me. I want to be supported well, like, like receive in abundance, right? Be able to like give that back, but just by nature of being me. And so that means like I want the opportunities that are for me to find me, you know, and then I'll use my wise discrimination, and then I'll like go and be of service for them. And so that's like what this was. Because I literally wrote down I want to live in the forest. And so not only do they do this work in the forest, you have to live out there for 8 days at a time in the forest. So like half of the month, I'm actually living in Pisgah National Forest. Do you find this like as mind-blowing emoji as I do? This is why like also, I mean, I wanted to like announce this like in our sacred circle on this journey, but like also I can't even talk about it yet because it's so absurd. Like how we can and do manifest, you know, like what it is that's going on in our psyche. And so the clearer that we get, right, the more aligned that we get, the more embodied that we become. So it's about receiving and embodying. The more it shows up for us like wormhole to the nth degree. Like this almost happened too fast. Where then they were like, had all these like official rules and things, and they basically like, I couldn't go to like their seminar, and they were like, look, you know what, we really want you to work for us. We want to fast track you, so you don't need to do that seminar. Just come and we'll get you trained, and you can start whenever you want. So like, here I am. And so the irony, here's the ultimate little people irony, is that this is like the first legit virtual pilgrimage I've done since they told me. I mean, I've done other ones like to various degrees, but like this is actually the most epic one that I've done ever. There's like these 5 days, but it's going to be longer. It has to be longer. Yeah, and it's epic. And so as I you know, got the memo, and I got it like, I think, yeah, like it was a soul memo this time. It was like, oh, it's time. Like I just felt it like deep within me, like it's time to do a virtual pilgrimage. They were all like, the little people were all like cheering in the background because they knew that I was going to get this job and that I was going to return to the same place, the same exact place where the first Earth Magic virtual pilgrimage started. When I started this Facebook group, you can go to like the inception of it. I'm sure it's historically tracked in this Facebook group. It started in 2018 for the Earth Magic virtual pilgrimage. I think I transmitted things from Pisgah. I remember we actually did it in a different group, but anyway, we did it. And now I'm back on this Earth Magic virtual pilgrimage. And okay, here's one more thing I'll say, and then I'll finish up, because I mean, I'm telling you the story, one, because like I love you and I want you to know, and like you kind of need to know because I'm probably going to be talking about this place and you're going to be like, what the heck? So the last thing I'll say is that this is not just wilderness therapy, but it's for at-risk youth. And so my undergrad is in psychology and sociology, and I specialize in child development. This was like 1 million years ago and 1 million lifetimes, like in the cosmic sense, in this life, like this actual human life that I live. I wanted to be a child psychologist, like ever since I was in high school. And I took that track and I quit it because I didn't like the system, how diagnostic and prescriptive it was. And you know what? Everything, I lived in New York City, was an artist. I did all those pilgrimages, like worked with elephants, like, you know, like all of this varying stuff that I did, I'm being asked to do in this job. And this job, like, is that job that I set the intention for when I was like 14 or 16. Like, I just let it go, and it came the heck back. Like, so now I'm doing wilderness therapy for at-risk youth. And I'm just like, the minute that I came here, like, I mean, as I was driving up, I could just feel, like we did yesterday, that heart, expand. I could just feel my high heart being like, yes, like, yes, you followed the path and you're here now, and the sun and the trees and it's shining and the light. I'll post pictures of this, like, somewhere, like in the Facebook group maybe, or in the email, like the light on the bridge, like, was just like, ah. Oh, it already is. Yeah, it's in the Facebook group already. I mean, I'm just home here, and the community here, like, this place has been, was started, not here, but the first version of it was started in 1981. So it's been around for a long time, and it is like nothing. It's like another dimension here. So let me rein it back in and just say that, a lot of the work that I've been doing also in the past couple of years has been a reclamation of the divine feminine energies within myself. I realized I had sacrificed them, to the patriarchy, as many of us had. And through actually that reunion and reclamation and reintegration of those energies, I mean, that was actually what allowed me to recognize that, like, the more I embrace and embody the divine feminine, the less female I actually am. That's hashtag paradox alert. Not that that's going to happen to you, but amazing, mystical, wonderful things will happen because, in part, it is that divine feminine creatrix energy that creates all of these connections that allowed me to be here right now, right? And I have a very active role in that. And so I'm telling you this, like, I hope, please, like, let me know if this makes sense. I'm telling this as a metaphor because I know each and every one of you has dreams and desires for your life and things you want to see come to pass. And not only can they, but the more we bring in the divine feminine, the more we tap into that interconnected earth web. And that earth magic that I talk about is, I mean, it's twofold. It's honoring this planet, and so reciprocity is so important here, and really, like, honoring and, like, taking moments of our life just to, like, feel what it feels like to be alive, right? And so that's part of earth magic. Like, if you do something like forest bathing or go hiking or, like, foraging or anything out in nature, like, everyone does it because they feel this tremendous sense of peace and, like, connection, and so that's, like, part of the magic. But the other part of it is really, like, that when we tap into that energetic web, because I think a lot of times we can kind of get stuck in the very tangible, practical earth things, because the earth is, right, like, embodied, and it's physical in nature, right? But that's the thing about the divine feminine energies, is that they are energy, and it is these energies, right, that make up all of this gloriousness that we see in the physical form. So the more we tap into that web where everything is connected and everything has an impact on everything else, and the more aware that we become of our own psyches and what it is we're co-creating, right, and then pursuing inspired actions, right, that not only help our situation, but the situation at large, right? I'm kind of hinting at permaculture again, in this, like, very non-permaculture way. Like, a lot of people wouldn't describe it like this, but we all have our own definitions. In fact, permaculture was, like, derived from both a lot of indigenous cultures and also the study of biomimicry and biodynamics, right? It's like the systems are modeled off of what nature does naturally, right? So the more we tap into that energetically and practically, the more we, like, just kind of, like, snap into alignment with whatever it is we're meant to be doing and where we're meant to be going and who we're meant to be, like, meeting along the way. And this is so important right now because we are in the process of co-creating new earth as I've called it before, which is not like New Earth. Like that comes from Eckhart Tolle, New Earth, and I like his description of it. But you know what it is basically like revisioning what our society needs to be so that we can all thrive, including ourselves and including everything else. So yeah, so what we did in the grokking, right, was bringing up and in some of that energy and some of that stability, that groundedness, and those resources, those energetic resources, you know, that really help us. Because the more grounded we are, both in our bodies and to the divine feminine earth energies, the more of these kinds of manifestations happen like this, right? Because a lot of times, okay, this is the last thing I'm going to say. So, like, this is a phenomenon now here on this planet where there are so many of us, like so many of these like amazing spiritual beings who are like awakened, whatever you want to call it. They're like tapped in, they're starseed, they're whatever, right? It's all amazing. And the vast majority of us are living from the heart up, pretty much, you know, and some even less. Like some are just like their like crown and third eye are like blazing open, but it's not connected to their heart, you know, or it's not connected to their throat and they're not able to express it, like, you know, even though they're experiencing it. But a lot of us are connected from our hearts up, and we're like feeling it, you know, like we are, it's like coming through our hearts, and it's like creating compassion and care. And you know, like the social justice and the social care movement right now really demonstrates that. Some people have brought it down to their solar plexus, which is like that spirituality in action, but I find that a lot of it gets stuck right before it gets there. And we don't necessarily know what to do with it. That's like our solar plexus, right? It's our space of action. We don't know what to do with it because we're not like bringing it all the way in and down. Like it has to get into our room space. It has to be rooted deeply, deeply, deeply to this planet. Like we can't just have all these spiritual beings floating around, because what happens when we float around is we spiritually bypass everyone and everything on this planet, you know? So we touched on it today, right? We set our taproot down deep into the subsoils of our own embodiment and brought in some of that energy so that we can bring in this amazing spiritual energy into our lived human experience and how that impacts what we are co-creating in our lives and in the society and in our world at large. And that ripples out into intergalactic amazingness. Did I touch on everything I wanted to touch on? You don't know. But that's what we did in grokking today. Let me just swap. Last thing I want to say is also, you know, we opened ourselves up because, like I was talking about, a lot of times when we think about like our bodies, our lives, the planet, we think about it in a really like literal, tangible, physical sense. So we also opened up our perception, our senses, right, to be able to take in more, to be able to see more, to maybe be able to see, and I mean see, I don't just mean like visually, right, but also visually, but to be able to sense, right, in larger ways and also different ways, because a lot of the ways that we do sense the world around us are conditioned, right? So this is also part of the decolonizing work, is that, this is what I was saying about permaculture, and it coming from a lot of indigenous cultures, you know, is that indigenous and shamanic cultures, right, like see the world in a very different way than conventional society. Like they do see it as this interconnected web, you know, and they see that this world is a dream, right? And that the dream is our world, right? And how we relate to that. So we touched on that today to open up our perception, to be able to not just know that intellectually, but to live that. Okay, I love you. Please, go integrate and make these practices into your daily life. And then watch the Spirit Allies things, because also there's a fae being that comes into Josh's interview, and then Mama Joanne talks about them as well, and it's just like, oh, you guys, like, you little guys, even if you're not guys. All right, I love you. Okay, so I gotta show you this. There's Theseus, my truck, back there, and I was gonna just show you the pictures, but I don't know. I needed to tell you the story real quick. So when I got here to Sue's, so I also forgot to say that this is my dream job for so many reasons, like weird reasons, where I was like, I could only work at a place if I can work 2 weeks off according to my 2 weeks on according to my biorhythms and 2 weeks off, and like I can do that here. Like there's like so many weird reasons why this is perfect. But so one of them is that, and this is why I like look so crazy right now, because actually, and I keep putting my fingers there, we're in training right now, we're right in the middle of it. We're on day 2 of 4 days, and I just drove here. It took me 3 days to drive from New Jersey to North Carolina, sleeping in vans and in the woods, and then I drove right into training. So I'm like exhausted, but in that like way. But when I first got here, it was on Sunday night, and they were basically like, yeah, you can sleep here, like here's the code to our building, John should be there, whatever. No one was here except this guy. Do you see that? Up there is a little person, and there's another one somewhere, because I was like wandering around being like, where is everybody, like why is no one here, and why are they just like letting me into their building like with all their equipment, and they like don't even really know me basically. No one checked my ID, like they haven't even like interviewed me in person yet. Because these little guys, little people were here to greet me. No one else was here. They were the only ones here. And as I wandered around, I think the other one's over here. As I wandered around to find my way home to my new home, this one. Hi. Up to shenanigans. I'm positive. So anyway, I had to show you that. It was wild. I was like, the only people here are little people.